The message came at midnight. Every television, every radio, every phone on Earth displayed the same thing. A face appeared on the screens. It was not human. The creature had gray skin, 4 eyes, and a mouthful of sharp teeth. It spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding rocks. People of Earth, the Galactic Hunting Federation has chosen your world. In 3 days, 12 hunters will arrive. They will hunt your species for sport. This is a great honor. Your kind has been selected from 10,000 worlds. Do not resist. Do not hide. The hunt will last 1 month. When it ends, we will leave. This is the way of the galaxy. The screen went black. Panic spread across the planet. People ran to their cars and drove nowhere. Governments called emergency meetings. Military leaders shouted at each other in crowded rooms. Nobody knew what to do. In Washington, General David Park sat alone in his office. He was 60 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in 3 wars. He had seen death many times. But this was different. This was not a war they could win with tanks and missiles. His phone rang. It was the president. "David, we need options," the president said. Her voice was shaking. "The public is terrified. Other countries are threatening to launch nuclear weapons at the alien ship." "That would be suicide," David replied. "Their technology is too advanced. We saw what they did to the Russian missiles. They turned them into dust before they even left the atmosphere. Then what do we do? Just let them hunt us like animals?" David closed his eyes. He thought about his daughter. She was 25 now, living in Seattle. He thought about his grandchildren. They were too young to understand what was happening. "Give me 1 hour," he said. "I have an idea." He hung up the phone and walked to his computer. He typed in a password that only 7 people on Earth knew. A classified database opened. Inside were files on the most dangerous humans alive. Assassins, soldiers, survivors, people who had done impossible things. David scrolled through the files. He read about a man who had killed 30 enemies with his bare hands in Afghanistan. He read about a woman who had escaped from a North Korean prison by digging a tunnel with a spoon. He read about a sniper who had made kills from 2 miles away. But none of them felt right. These aliens were not human enemies. They were hunters. They had technology that humans could not match. Guns and bombs would not work against them. David needed something different. He needed someone who could survive without technology. Someone who could become invisible in the wild. Someone who understood hunting not as a job, but as a way of life. He found the file at the bottom of the list. The name read, Yuna Kim. The photo showed a small woman with black hair and calm eyes. She was not smiling. She looked directly at the camera like she was studying it. David read her history. She had joined the army at 18. She had become a ranger at 22. She had completed missions in jungles, deserts, and frozen wastelands. Her commanders had called her the Ghost because she could move without making a sound. But the interesting part came later. 5 years ago, her helicopter had crashed in Siberia during a secret mission. Her entire team had died. She had survived alone in the wilderness for 7 months. When rescue teams finally found her, she was healthy and strong. She had built a shelter, made weapons from stone, and hunted animals with traps she had designed herself. The rescue team leader had written a note in the file. Subject showed no signs of trauma or distress. When asked how she survived, she said, "The land provides. You just have to listen." After leaving the military, Yuna had moved to Alaska. She lived alone in a cabin with no electricity. She worked as a wilderness guide, teaching rich tourists how to survive in the forest. But she preferred her own company. Neighbors said she could disappear into the trees and not return for weeks. David picked up his phone and called his assistant. Find Una Kim, he said. She lives somewhere in Alaska. Bring her to me, and tell her it is about saving the human race. 20 hours later, a helicopter landed near a small cabin in the Alaskan mountains. Soldiers jumped out and walked toward the building. Snow crunched under their boots. The air was so cold that their breath turned to fog. The cabin door was open. Inside, they found a simple room with a bed, a table, and a fireplace. Animal skins hung on the walls. Knives of different sizes sat on a wooden shelf. But there was no one inside. "Where is she?" one soldier asked. "Behind you," a voice said. The soldiers spun around. A woman stood at the edge of the trees. She was small, barely reaching their shoulders. She wore a thick jacket made of animal fur. In her hands, she held a dead deer. Blood dripped onto the snow. "Una Kim?" the lead soldier asked. "Yes, General Park sent us. He needs your help." Una looked at them with eyes that showed no emotion. She had heard the alien message like everyone else. But while the world had panicked, she had continued her work. Animals still needed to be hunted. Meat still needed to be prepared. Fear was a luxury she could not afford. "Help with what?" she asked. "The aliens. They are coming to hunt us. The general thinks you can stop them." Una was quiet for a long moment. She looked up at the sky. Somewhere beyond the clouds, a ship full of alien hunters was waiting. "How many?" she finally asked. 12. She nodded slowly. Then she walked past the soldiers and entered her cabin. She laid the deer on the table and began to sharpen her knife. "Tell your general I will come," she said without looking at them. "But I do things my way. No soldiers. No weapons that make noise. Just me and the land." The soldiers looked at each other. They did not understand how this small woman could fight alien hunters. But they had their orders. "The helicopter is waiting," the lead soldier said. "Give me 1 hour," Una replied. "I need to finish preparing this meat. It would be wrong to waste it." The soldiers waited outside in the cold. 1 hour later, Una walked out of her cabin. She carried a small pack on her back. Inside were simple things: rope, a knife, a fire starter, and some dried meat. She had left her modern equipment behind. She climbed into the helicopter without saying a word. As it lifted into the sky, she looked down at her cabin. She did not know if she would ever see it again. But she was not afraid. Fear was for those who did not understand death. And Una understood death very well. She had been dealing it for a long time. The alien ship landed in the Canadian Rocky Mountains on a cold Tuesday morning. It came down slowly, like a giant metal bird, and touched the ground without making a sound. Trees bent away from it. Snow melted in a perfect circle around it. A door opened in the side of the ship. 12 figures walked out. They were the most feared hunters in the galaxy. Each one had killed hundreds of creatures on hundreds of worlds. They wore armor made from materials that did not exist on Earth. They carried weapons that could turn a human into ash with one shot. The leader was called Vex. He stood 8 feet tall with green scales covering his body. His eyes were yellow like a snake. He had been hunting for 200 years and had never failed to catch his prey. On his belt hung the skulls of his favorite kills. Next to him stood Kira, a female hunter from the Shadow Moons. Her skin was pure black, and she could become invisible in darkness. She carried 2 curved blades that made no sound when they cut through flesh. She had killed 97 different species. Humans would be her 98th. Tor was the largest of the group. He had 4 arms, each one thick with muscle. His head was covered in bony plates like a dinosaur. He did not use weapons because he did not need them. His hands could crush stone. The other hunters were equally dangerous. There was Mira, who could think 10 times faster than any human. There was Jin, a young hunter, trying to prove himself. There were warriors with claws, fangs, poison, and technology that humans could not understand. They looked at the forest around them and laughed. "This is what the Federation chose," Vex said. "Trees and snow? This will be too easy. I heard humans are weak," Tor added. "Soft bodies. No claws, no armor. They die if you just look at them too hard." The hunters set up their camp near the ship. They built fires and cooked food they had brought from their home worlds. They told stories about their greatest kills. They did not bother to post guards. Why would they? Nothing on this planet could threaten them. 60 miles away, Yuna watched through binoculars. She had arrived 3 days before the aliens landed. General Park had given her maps, satellite photos, and information about where the ship would probably land. She had used this information to find the perfect watching spot on a mountain ridge. For 3 days, she had studied the land. She had walked every trail, climbed every hill, and tested every river. She knew where the ground was soft and where it was hard. She knew where sound carried and where it disappeared. She knew the forest like she knew her own body. Now she watched the aliens and learned. She watched how they walked. Vex was confident, taking big steps without looking down. He thought he was invincible. Kira moved differently, always staying near shadows. She was more careful. Tor was loud, breaking branches and kicking rocks. He did not care about being quiet. Yuna watched them for 6 hours. She did not eat. She did not move. She barely breathed. When the sun began to set, she put away her binoculars and started to climb down the mountain. She had a plan. The next morning, Vex decided to hunt alone. He wanted to catch the first human himself. It would prove that he was still the greatest hunter in the galaxy. He walked into the forest with his weapon ready. His armor had special sensors that could detect body heat from a mile away. Every few seconds, he looked at the small screen on his arm. It showed the heat signatures of animals around him. Deer, birds, and small creatures appeared as orange dots, but no humans. Vex walked deeper into the forest. The trees grew thicker. Snow covered everything. His sensors continued to search, but they found nothing. He did not know that Yuna was 30 feet away. She had buried herself in a snowbank 3 hours before dawn. She had covered her body with mud and pine needles. She had slowed her breathing until her heart beat only once every few seconds. Her body temperature had dropped so low that she was nearly invisible to heat sensors. She had learned this trick in Siberia. The cold had taught her that the body could do amazing things when survival required it. Vex walked past her hiding spot. His heavy footsteps shook the ground. Yuna could see his scaled feet through a small gap in the snow. She waited. She did not move. She did not breathe. He stopped 10 feet away from her. For a moment, Yuna thought he had seen her. Her muscles tensed. Her hand found the handle of her weapon. It was a spear she had made herself during the past 3 days. The shaft was a straight pine branch. The tip was obsidian, a type of volcanic glass that was sharper than any metal blade. But Vex had not seen her. He was looking at his screen, confused about why he could not find any humans. He made a sound of frustration and started to walk again. Yuna rose from the snow dot. She moved without sound, her feet finding solid ground by instinct. The spear in her hands was perfectly balanced. She had thrown thousands of spears in her life. She knew exactly how much force she needed. Vex heard something behind him. He started to turn. Too late. The obsidian tip entered his neck at the exact spot where his scales did not connect properly. It was a gap no bigger than a coin. Yuna had noticed it while watching him through her binoculars. The spear went through his throat and out the other side. Vex's eyes went wide. He tried to raise his weapon, but his arms would not obey. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. Green blood poured down his chest. He fell to his knees. then onto his face. The snow turned dark with his blood. Una stood over him and watched the life leave his eyes. She felt nothing. This was not personal. This was survival. She removed the communication device from his belt. Then she grabbed his legs and dragged his body into a deep ravine. She covered it with branches and snow. By the time she finished, there was no sign that anything had happened. She disappeared into the forest like smoke. That evening, the other hunters noticed that Vex had not returned. They searched for him with their technology, but their sensors found nothing. By dawn, they found his body at the bottom of the ravine. Tor roared with anger. Kira stood silently, her eyes scanning the tree line. A human did this, Myra said, examining the wound. A primitive weapon. A spear made of stone. Impossible, Jin argued. Vex was the greatest among us. No human could kill him. And yet he is dead, Kira replied softly. The hunters looked at the forest around them. For the first time since landing on Earth, they felt something they had not felt in centuries. Fear. Somewhere in the trees. Una was watching them. She ate dried meat and drank water from a stream. She allowed herself a small moment of satisfaction. 1 down. 11 to go. After Vex died, the hunters changed their behavior. They stopped laughing. They stopped telling stories. They began to watch the forest with careful eyes. Tor wanted revenge. He wanted to charge into the trees and destroy everything until he found the human who had killed their leader. But Myra stopped him. That is exactly what the human wants, she said. They want us to be angry. Angry hunters make mistakes. Then what do? Jin asked. Sit here and wait to be killed one by one? Kira stepped forward. Her black skin seemed to absorb the light around her. I will hunt tonight, she said. Darkness is my home. No creature has ever escaped me in the dark. The other hunters agreed. If anyone could find this human, it was Kira. She had trained for 50 years in caves where light never reached. She could see in complete blackness. She could hear a heartbeat from 100 feet away. When night fell, Kira walked into the forest alone. The moon was hidden behind clouds. The darkness was almost complete. Kira smiled. This was perfect. She activated the sensors in her armor and began to move through the trees. For an hour, she found nothing. The forest was quiet except for the sound of wind and distant animals. She moved deeper, her feet making no sound on the frozen ground. Then she heard it. A twig snapping somewhere ahead. Kira stopped. She listened carefully. There it was again. Something was moving through the trees about 200 meters to the north. She followed the sound, moving like a ghost through the darkness. Her blades were ready in her hands. She could feel the excitement building in her chest. The hunt was happening. She saw movement between the trees. A shape, darker than the shadows around it. It was moving away from her, heading toward a small valley. Kira followed. She was patient. She did not rush. She let the distance between them shrink slowly. The shape continued to move, always staying just far enough ahead to be visible, but not clear. They traveled for 20 minutes. The forest grew thicker. The valley narrowed. Kira noticed that the ground was becoming softer. Her feet were sinking slightly into the earth. The shape ahead stopped moving. Kira stopped too. She waited, listening. Nothing. Complete silence. Then she understood. The shape she had been following was not the human. It was a coat hanging from a tree branch, moving in the wind. She had been led into a trap. Kira tried to step backward, but her foot caught something. A rope around her ankle pulled tight. Before she could cut it, she was yanked into the air. Her body flew upward and stopped suddenly, leaving her hanging upside down from a thick tree branch. Her blades fell from her hands. Blood rushed to her head. She twisted and turned, trying to reach the rope with her claws, but the trap had been designed perfectly. The more she struggled, the tighter it became. A figure stepped out of the darkness. Yuna looked up at the hanging hunter. Her face showed no emotion. In her hand, she held a simple knife made from bone and stone. "You hunt in the dark," Yuna said quietly. "You think darkness belongs to you, but darkness belongs to no one. It only helps those who understand it." Kira hissed at her. "Cut me down, and I will show you true darkness." "No," Yuna replied. "You will not." The knife moved fast. One quick cut across the throat. Kira made a small choking sound and then went still. Black blood dripped onto the snow below. Yun cut the rope and let the body fall. She took Kira's blades because they were well made and might be useful. Then she vanished into the trees. The hunters found Kira's body at sunrise. Her blood had frozen into a black pool around her head. Her weapons were gone. Her eyes were still open, staring at nothing. This time, no one suggested the death was impossible. Two of their best hunters were dead in 2 days. Tor could not control his anger any longer. He roared at the sky and charged into the forest with 3 other hunters. They burned trees with their weapons. They destroyed everything in their path. They found nothing, but Yuna found them. She watched from a hidden position as Tor and his group crashed through the forest. They were loud and stupid. They did not understand that noise was a weakness. That night, she crawled through a freezing river for 3 hours. The water was so cold that ice formed on her clothes. But she kept moving. When she reached the hunter's camp, she was behind their sensors and guards. One hunter sat alone, watching the northern tree line. His name was Brick. He was young and nervous. His weapon was pointed in the wrong direction. Yuna came up behind him. She wrapped a length of paracord around his throat and pulled tight. Brick tried to scream, but no sound came out. He reached for his weapon, but his arms were too weak. Within 30 seconds, he was dead. Yuna lowered his body gently to the ground. She took his communication device and disappeared. The next morning, the hunters found Brick dead at his post. He looked peaceful, like he was sleeping, but the purple marks on his neck told the truth. 9 of us left, Myra said. "We are being hunted," Jin whispered. "We came here to hunt, and now we are the prey." Tor slammed his fists together. "We will not run from one human." "No one is running," Myra replied calmly. "But we must be smarter. We must work together. This human knows the land better than we do. We cannot win by strength alone." The hunters agreed to stay in pairs. They set up motion sensors around their camp. They created patrol schedules and communication protocols. For 3 days, they were careful and organized. During those 3 days, Yuna rested. She ate well and slept warm. She knew that patience was a weapon. She let the hunters grow comfortable with their new routines. She let them believe they were safe. On the 4th night, she struck again. A hunter named Stone was patrolling with his partner, Glass. They walked slowly through the dark forest, their weapons ready. They checked their sensors every few seconds. Nothing appeared. Stone heard a sound to his left. He turned to look. When he turned back, Glass was gone. "Glass?" Stone whispered. No answer. He looked down and saw drag marks in the snow leading into a thick group of bushes. He followed carefully, his heart pounding. He found Glass behind a large rock. Her throat had been cut. Her eyes stared at the sky. Stone opened his mouth to call for help. A hand covered his face from behind. A blade entered his back and found his heart. He died without making a sound. By morning, there were 7 hunters left. By the following night, there were 6. One hunter disappeared completely, and they never found his body. Mira called a meeting. The surviving hunters sat in a circle around the fire. They looked tired and scared. "We must leave this planet," Myra said. "This human is something we have never faced before. Jin stood up angrily. Leave? The Galactic Hunting Federation will shame us forever. We will be known as the hunters who ran from one primitive creature. Better to be shamed than dead, another hunter replied. Jin looked at the forest with hatred in his eyes. I will not run. Tomorrow, I will challenge this human to open combat. Face to face. No tricks, no traps. If I win, we continue the hunt. If I lose, you can leave with your shame. The other hunters were silent. They knew Jin was proud and foolish. But they also knew that if he could kill the human, the hunt could continue. Very well, Myra said. Make your challenge. Jin activated his communication device. Vice? He spoke in a loud voice that echoed through the mountains. Human. I know you are listening. I am Jin, hunter of the Star Clan. I challenge you to combat at noon tomorrow. Meet me in the clearing south of this camp. Come alone. Fight with honor. Or hide like the coward you are. 60 miles away, Yuna heard every word through Vex's stolen communicator. She looked at the rising moon and considered her options. She could ignore the challenge. She could continue her slow, careful hunting. Eventually, she would kill them all. But she thought about what this moment meant. The galaxy was watching. Every alien species was waiting to see what humans would do. If she hid from this challenge, they would think humans were weak. They would come back. They would hunt again. Yuna stood up and began walking toward the clearing dot. It was time to show the galaxy what a human could do. The morning sun rose slowly over the mountains. Light touched the snow and made it shine like diamonds. Birds began to sing in the trees. It was a beautiful day, but the air felt heavy with something dark. Jin stood in the center of the clearing. He had been waiting since dawn. His energy blade hummed softly in his hand, glowing bright blue. His armor was polished and clean. He wanted to look perfect for this moment. The other 5 hunters watched from the edge of the clearing. They stood in a line, their weapons ready. They did not expect the human to actually come. Humans were supposed to be cowards who hid and used tricks. Open combat was not their way, but Myra was not so sure. She had studied the bodies of their fallen hunters. She had seen the precision of the kills. This human was different. This human was not afraid. The minutes passed slowly. Jin began to feel embarrassed. Had he scared the human away? Would he have to return to the camp without a fight? The other hunters would laugh at him. Then he heard footsteps. From the northern edge of the clearing, a figure emerged from the trees. It was small, much smaller than Jin had expected. It walked slowly, calmly, like someone taking a morning walk. No rush, no fear. Yuna stepped into the sunlight. She wore simple clothes made from animal skins. Her black hair was tied back from her face. In her hands, she carried 2 weapons. One was the stone knife she had made in the forest. The other was Kira's curved blade, taken from the dead hunter's body. Jin stared at her. He had expected a warrior, someone tall and strong. Instead, he saw a woman who barely reached his chest. She looked like she weighed nothing. Her arms were thin, her body was small, but her eyes made him pause. They were dark and calm, like deep water. There was no fear in them, no anger, no excitement. Just a quiet focus that made Jin feel strange inside. You came, Jin said. He tried to sound confident, but his voice was higher than he wanted. You called, Yuna replied simply. You know you cannot win. My blade can cut through anything. My armor can stop any weapon. You are just a primitive creature with stones and sticks. Yuna did not respond. She just waited. Jin raised his blade. Any last words, human? Yuna tilted her head slightly. Yes, you talk too much. Jin screamed with anger and charged. He was fast, much faster than any human could be. His blade cut through the air with a sound like thunder. The light from it was blinding. Yuna moved. She did not move backward or sideways. She moved toward Jin, stepping inside his attack at the last moment. His blade swung past her head, missing by inches. Before he could recover, she struck. Her stone knife found the small gap under his arm, where his armor connected. The blade went deep. Jin screamed and stumbled backward. He looked down at the blood flowing from his side. It was purple, bright purple, spreading across his silver armor. Impossible, he whispered. Yuna did not give him time to think. She attacked again, moving in a way that Jin could not follow. She was too close, too fast, too unpredictable. Every time he swung his blade, she was somewhere else. Every time he tried to grab her, she slipped away like water. She cut him again, and again. Small wounds, each one in a place where his armor did not protect him. Jin realized something terrible. This human had studied them. She had watched them for days. She knew exactly where their armor was weak. She knew exactly how they moved. He tried to change his strategy. He jumped backward to create distance. He fired a beam of energy from his gauntlet. The beam hit a tree behind Yuna and turned it to ash. But Yuna was not there anymore. She had rolled to the side the moment she saw his arm move. "Stand still," Jin shouted. "Why would I do that?" Yuna asked. She threw her stone knife. It spun through the air and buried itself in Jin's thigh. He fell to one knee, screaming. His energy blade dropped from his hand. Yuna walked toward him slowly. She picked up his fallen blade and looked at it for a moment. Then she turned it off and threw it aside. "Weapons do not make a hunter," she said. "The mind makes a hunter. The body makes a hunter. You have forgotten this. You rely on your technology like a child relies on its mother." Jin looked up at her. Blood leaked from multiple wounds. His purple blood mixed with the white snow. "What are you?" he asked. Yuna crouched down so their eyes were level. "I am what you created. Your kind has been hunting across the galaxy for thousands of years. You have never faced real hunters because you have always had better weapons. The weapons can be lost. Technology can fail. When that happens, what is left?" Jin had no answer. "I will tell you what is left," Yuna continued. "The will to survive. The knowledge of the land. The understanding that every creature, no matter how advanced, has weaknesses." She raised Kira's curved blade. "You came here to hunt us. You thought we were prey, but you forgot something important." "What?" Jin whispered. "On this planet, we are the apex predators." The blade came down fast. Jin died quickly, which was more mercy than he deserved. Yuna stood up and looked at the other hunters. They stood frozen at the edge of the clearing. None of them moved. None of them spoke. She cleaned her blade on Jin's cape and walked back toward the trees. Before she disappeared into the forest, she stopped and turned her head. "You should leave this planet," she said, without looking at them. "Go back to your Federation. Tell them what happened here. Tell them Earth is not a hunting ground. Tell them if you come back, I will not be so kind." Then she vanished into the trees. For a long moment, the hunters just stood there. Tor was the first to speak. "We should kill her now. All of us together. She cannot defeat 5 at once." Myra shook her head. "You saw what she just did. Jin was one of our best fighters. She killed him in less than a minute, with a stone knife and a stolen blade. No armor, no weapons, just skill. So what do we do?" Another hunter asked. His name was Rex, and his voice was shaking. Myra looked at the forest where Yuna had disappeared. "We leave. We go back to the ship. We report to the Federation that this world is not suitable for hunting." "They will call us cowards," Tor said angrily. "Better to be called a coward than to be dead," Myra replied. "Besides, we have valuable information. This planet has a defender. The Federation needs to know this." The hunters argued for several more minutes. But in the end, even Tor agreed to leave. They had lost 7 of their strongest hunters to one small human female. Continuing the hunt would be suicide. They began walking back to their ship. Mira stayed at the back of the group, watching the trees carefully. She had a feeling this was not over. She was right. That night, while the hunters prepared their ship for departure, Yuna was climbing a mountain. She had anticipated their retreat. She had known they would try to run, and she had no intention of letting all of them escape. 3 hours before dawn, she reached the spot she had chosen. It was a cliff overlooking the valley where the alien ship sat. From here, she could see everything. The ship, the hunters, the fuel lines that connected the ship to a small power generator. She had brought tools from a supply station she had found. Simple tools, a wrench, a pair of wire cutters, a screwdriver. Nothing advanced, nothing alien, just enough to make sure the ship would never fly again. Yuna smiled in the darkness. The hunt was almost over. The alien ship sat in the valley like a sleeping giant. Its metal surface reflected the moonlight. Inside, the 5 remaining hunters prepared to leave Earth forever. Tor was checking the weapon storage. Rex was programming the navigation system. 2 other hunters, named Claw and Storm, were loading supplies. Mira sat alone in the command room, thinking about everything that had happened. She could not stop thinking about the human. About Yuna. In all her years of hunting, Myra had never seen anything like her. The way she moved, the way she thought, the way she had killed Jin in open combat, making one of their best warriors look like a child. What kind of planet produced creatures like this? Myra looked at the data on her screen. According to their information, humans had only developed space travel a few hundred years ago. They were considered a young species, primitive and weak. The Galactic Federation had not even bothered to study them properly. That was a mistake. "The ship is ready," Rex announced through the communication system. "We can leave in 30 minutes. Mira nodded to herself. 30 minutes. Then they would be off this terrible planet forever. She would write a report warning the Federation about Earth. She would tell them about the human who hunted hunters. Maybe they would listen. Maybe they would leave this world alone. Outside the ship, Yuna was moving through the shadows. She had spent the past 2 hours studying the ship from her position on the cliff. She had watched the hunters move around inside through the windows. She had counted them. 5, all accounted for. Now it was time. She climbed down the cliff face, finding handholds in the rock that would have been invisible to anyone else. Her fingers were strong from years of climbing. Her body was light and balanced. In 15 minutes, she reached the valley floor. The ship's fuel system was exactly where she had expected it to be. A thick cable ran from the ship to a small generator about 50 meters away. The generator hummed quietly, pumping power into the ship's engines. Yuna crawled on her belly through the snow until she reached the cable. She pulled out her wire cutters and examined the connection. It was complex, but she understood machines. In the military, she had learned how to disable vehicles, aircraft, and equipment. This alien technology was different, but the principles were the same. She found the weak point. A junction box where multiple cables came together. She opened it carefully, making no sound. Inside were wires of different colors. She did not know what each color meant, but she did not need to. She cut them all. Inside the ship, alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed everywhere. The engines, which had been warming up, suddenly went silent. "What is happening?" Tor shouted. Rex checked his console. His face went pale. "The fuel lines. Someone cut the fuel lines. We have no power. Fix it." "I cannot. The damage is too severe. We need to repair it manually." Myra stood up. Her heart was beating fast. "It is her. She is here." The hunters grabbed their weapons and ran outside. They spread out around the ship, their eyes scanning the darkness. Snow was beginning to fall. The wind was picking up. Visibility was getting worse every second. "Find her," Tor commanded. "She cannot be far." Claw moved toward the generator. He saw the damaged junction box and growled. "Over here." She was here. The hunters gathered around the generator. They looked at the destroyed cables. They looked at each other. Fear was visible on their faces now. They did not try to hide it anymore. "We need to get inside," Myra said. "We can defend ourselves better inside the ship." They began walking back toward the ship. Tor was in front. Rex and Storm were in the middle. Claw and Myra were at the back. Something flew out of the darkness and hit Claw in the throat. He made a choking sound and fell forward. A throwing knife was buried in his neck. "Contact!" Tor screamed. The hunters fired their weapons into the darkness. Energy beams lit up the night, turning trees into ash and melting snow into steam. They fired for 20 seconds straight. When they stopped, there was silence. "Did we get her?" Rex asked. The answer came from behind them. Storm screamed. When they turned, they saw him falling to the ground. Blood poured from a wound in his back. Behind him stood Yuna, holding a blade that dripped with purple blood. Tor roared and swung his 4 arms at her. Yuna ducked under his attack and drove her blade into his knee. Tor stumbled and fell. Rex raised his weapon, but Yuna was already moving. She grabbed his arm and twisted. The weapon fired into the air as his shoulder broke. She finished him with a quick strike to the throat. Tor tried to stand, but his knee would not support him. He crawled toward Yuna, rage burning in his eyes. "I will kill you," he screamed. "I will tear you apart." Yuna kicked his arms out from under him. He fell face first into the snow. "You will not," she said calmly. She placed her foot on his head and pushed down. Tor struggled, but he could not break free. He screamed and cursed in his alien language. Yuna did not hurry. She waited until he stopped moving, until the life left his body, until he was just another dead hunter in the snow. When she looked up, Myra was standing 10 meters away. She had not run. She had not tried to fight. She just stood there, watching. "You could have escaped," Yuna said. "Where would I go?" Myra replied, "I cannot fly the ship. I cannot survive on this planet. You have beaten us." Yuna studied her. Myra was different from the others. There was intelligence in her eyes, understanding. "You know why I cannot let you all die," Yuna said. Myra nodded slowly. "You need a messenger. Someone to tell the Federation what happened here." "Yes." Myra was quiet for a moment. Snow fell around them. The wind howled through the mountains. "What do you want me to tell them?" she asked. Yuna walked closer. She stopped an arm's length away from Myra. Up close, the alien could see the scars on the human's face. Old wounds from old battles. "Tell them this world is not prey," Yuna said. "Tell them we are not weak. We are not soft. We have survived ice ages, wars, diseases, and disasters. We have climbed to the top of our food chain. We are the most successful hunters this planet has ever produced." She leaned closer, her eyes locked with Myra's. "Tell them that if they come back, we will send more like me. We will send thousands. We will hunt their hunters across the galaxy. We will become the thing they fear most." She paused. "Tell them Earth bites back." Myra nodded. She understood. Yuna stepped back. She pointed toward the east. "There is a human settlement 200 kilometers that way. Go there. They will give you a communication device. Call your Federation. Then leave this planet and never return." Myra began walking. She did not look back. She did not want to see the bodies of her friends. She just walked into the snow and disappeared. 3 days later, a Federation ship arrived to collect Myra. When she told them what had happened, They did not believe her at first. 11 of the galaxy's best hunters killed by one small human? Impossible, but Myra had proof. She had recordings from her armor. She had footage of Yuna killing Jin in the clearing. She had video of the final battle at the ship. The Federation watched in silence. When the footage ended, no one spoke for a long time. 1 week later, the Galactic Hunting Federation issued a formal order. Earth was removed from the list of hunting worlds. The official reason was environmental hazards. Anyone who violated this order would be expelled from the Federation forever. But the hunters knew the real reason. They whispered about it in bars and hunting lodges across the galaxy. They told stories about the ghost woman of Earth, the hunter of hunters, the creature who came from the snow and killed without mercy. They gave her many names. The Apex, the Earth Mother's Wrath, the Silent Death, but none of them would ever set foot on her planet again, on Earth. General David Park received a message from Mira before she left the solar system. It was short. Your champion was impressive. I hope I never meet another human like her. For your sake, I hope she is not unique. David smiled and closed the message. Then he made a phone call. Find Yuna Kim, he told his assistant. Tell her thank you. And tell her she has a job whenever she wants one. 3 weeks later, the assistant reported back. Sir, we could not find her. She went back to Alaska after the hunt. Her cabin is empty. No one has seen her since. David was not surprised. Some people were not meant to live in the normal world. Some people belonged to the wild dot in a valley deep in the Alaskan wilderness. Yuna sat outside a new cabin. Snow fell gently around her. A fire crackled nearby. On a wooden table lay a freshly caught deer, ready to be prepared. She had built this cabin herself, even deeper in the mountains than her old one. She wanted to be alone. She needed to be alone. The hunt had reminded her of who she really was. She was not a hero. She was not a soldier. She was simply a hunter. The best hunter her planet had ever produced. And now the galaxy knew it. Yuna smiled slightly and began to sharpen her knife. The fire crackled. The snow fell. The silence was perfect. Somewhere far above, in the black space between stars, stories about her were spreading. Species who had never heard of Earth were learning about the human woman who hunted the hunters. But Yuna did not care about fame or legends. She cared about the land, the animals, the simple rhythm of survival. She finished sharpening her knife and began to cut the deer. Tonight, she would eat well. Tomorrow, she would hunt again. That was enough for her. That would always be enough.